welcome to a special episode of the Nightdive Studios Deep Dive podcast. I am joined by a musical legend here today, and I'll get him to introduce himself. Clint, why don't you tell the audience, if they don't know who you are and what you do?
Well, thanks, Locke. My name is Clint Bajakian. I am a composer and a sound designer with about 33 years in the business of video game audio. I started in 91 working with my very good friends. So this is, a testament to who you know kind of thing when they talk about career development. In 1991 in California at LucasArts with Michael Land, who ran the sound department, and Peter McConnell. They had met at Harvard, and Michael and I had met at high school before that. And so, by the way, next year, or maybe I think it's 2026, will be the 50th anniversary of Michael and my meeting.
Amazing.
1976, and we played in bands and things. But we had a tremendous time at LucasArts in the 90s and released games like Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Monkey Island. Peter was the first one to do a digital audio score in Full Throttle for Tim Schafer. And that began around 1994. A new way of scoring games for us that allowed digital audio streaming, as opposed to the early 90s, which we were limited to MIDI scores that played over the player's whatever synthesizer they happened to have on their computer.
Yeah, it was a huge shift.
That, I went on to become independent for 4 years, had my own company called Bay Area Sound with a couple of great partners. And then went to Sony PlayStation in 2004 and headed up the original scoring group, which grew to about 20 people during my time there.
Nice.
And we worked on games like Uncharted and God of War and Infamous and other games. And it was a tremendous experience because at Sony, of course, we were now well into the realm of streaming digital audio. And adaptive digital audio. And with Sony PlayStation budgets, of course, we were able to record with live orchestra and live forces for most of our titles. And that pretty much, I've worked as an independent composer since. I taught 4 years at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music in a related program. And it kind of brings us up to the present.
Amazing. Thank you for that summary. That was like a book. Cole's notes, perfected there. I wanted to back things up and just, could you paint me a picture of that landscape during those early days at LucasArts? What are you feeling? What are the smells? What are the sights and sounds, while you're cranking away on some audio in those early days?
Well, that's a great question. It really was something. And in a way, I could say that those were both my most difficult years. I should say difficult in the sense of intensive, long hours. Often the way I explain it is we would make 3 yards and lose 2, and we'd be happy for that 1 yard net gain. We had technical difficulties constantly. Our computers would crash. It was because they called it the Wild Wild West. The Wild West. Many developers will fondly remember those days that way because all the developers, LucasArts included, had to make their own tools. We had to figure out how are we going to even make a game. And I can say very confidently that in those days, every company, and no matter what they may say, we're figuring out how to go about this business every day. Every day was a new set of challenges. For which there were no known solutions. And then once it was solved and moved on to the next problem or challenge, now you had that in your experience. But it never ceased to be new because everyone wanted to push the envelope of the hardware, which in our case at LucasArts in these days was strictly PC.
For those that don't know, Outlaws is a first-person shooter set in the Wild West with a very cinematic style of storytelling. And Clint, I wanted you to walk through your process and maybe set us up for what's going through your mind when you're working on Outlaws.
Outlaws was my best project, I think, both from the standpoint of the actual process of working on it and working with all the people and all the studio sessions and everything, but also from the standpoint of the finished product being something that I was very proud of, and kind of hung together nicely. The story behind Outlaws, it has to start actually with touching on Dark Forces really quickly, which was, as you know, a first-person 3D Star Wars shooter. Now, for that, Darren Stant was brought in from, I believe, Spectrum Holobyte around 92, I want to say, and began working on Dark Forces. For that, I did all the score and the sound effects, which, as we discussed earlier, were all had to be generated by a real-time synthesizer.
Yeah, that FM synth. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was very primitive. Now you turn the page to Darren finishing that title and moving on to Outlaws, and quite happily inviting me to be the composer. He gave me the assignment that we really wanted Outlaws to be a spaghetti western, not just a western, but a spaghetti western. And of course, iconic examples of that would be The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, A Fistful of Dollars, and those Sergio Leone, Clint Eastwood movies would be the best example. But of course, it was a whole genre, and it wasn't only Sergio Leone; it was a whole thing that mostly shot in Italy, which looked like the Wild West, right? And I said to myself, my God, I've always loved Ennio Morricone's spaghetti western scores. I mean, they're they're incredible. They're unbelievable. He, as a composer, in fact, he's right up there with John Williams for me as a favorite film composer in general, not just the spaghetti westerns. And I took that challenge, and I was really excited by it, and I was also daunted by it. But musically, I wasn't as daunted as I was from a production standpoint, because this was a very interesting time in the video game history where the transition was still unfolding from MIDI to digital audio. Now, Peter McConnell had done the score for Tim Schafer's Full Throttle a couple of years before. And for that, the musical score was actually streamed off of the CD. And it was adaptive. So there were transitions and crossfades. And if something happened in the game, the playhead would go over to that new piece of digital audio music and start streaming it. Pretty crude crossfades, but still, he could have custom transitions when he wanted. For Outlaws, the assignment was to have Redbook audio, which is the same as a CD. So when you go to the store, well, we don't really go to the store anymore and buy CDs, but we all know what a CD is. You put it in your CD player, and it's like a record.
Play all the tracks, yeah,
all the tracks. Well, that's exactly how Outlaws was released on 2 CD discs, with track 1 of CD 1 being the game.
Yeah,
it was the data track. And then all the other tracks were pieces of music, but they had a beginning, a middle, and an end. They had to end, right? It was like a record. So what was asked of me was to create a spaghetti western record.
Wow.
And I was like, my goodness. I said, okay, number one, if I do that with the synthesizers of the day, it will suck. It will absolutely suck. Maybe you could get away with some kind of fake orchestral thing, ironically. But when you have guitars and bongos and men going, huh, huh, and all these things, it just requires studio recording. And so I said to myself, oh my goodness, this is where I was daunted, especially at that time in the industry. And given the fact that LucasArts, our executive management, expected us to kind of, they got to know us over the years as being guys who just shut the door, went into a room, and with our computer came up with everything.
Got it done, yeah.
Right. And now we're talking about bringing in musicians and working in a recording studio and needing an engineer and needing microphones and mic preamps and everything else. And so I was a little worried about how that would go over in terms of approaching management for budget. But I was also really worried about, I'm conservatory trained, right? I mean, I'm
Yep.
like, well, how much do I really know myself about cutting a record, right? Essentially. So I thought, and it was probably the smartest thing I did on the project. I sat down with a big piece of paper and a pencil and was diagramming thoughts and ideas. And I came up with a need for a person. And I identified immediately Hans Roimschüssel,
Mm-hmm.
who went by Hans Christian, by the way, he was a studio bass player, a composer, a cellist, a music producer, a mixing engineer, a recording engineer, and brilliant. And a very good friend, by the way.
What a Swiss Army knife.
Oh my God, amazing. And so bringing him in, I just want to give full credit where it's due for the quality of the recordings and the mixing and just the way that whole album kind of works together and hangs together. It's Hans. I did compose it all and produce it all, but
Mm-hmm.
he was definitely a co-producer in many ways. I would say, well, we should lay down this now. And he'd say, no, Clint, we should do this first. Oh, okay. All right. And we went into the studio, and it was on the premises of LucasArts. And we had, we had a cello built in because of Hans. We had all the guitars built in because of me.
Yeah.
Except for the really virtuosic guitars, I brought in a professional guitarist.
Nice.
We brought in a percussion ensemble, a string quartet, a singer. Michael, Peter, and I did the male choirs that are so important to spaghetti western and the grunts and things.
The guttural grunts, yeah.
The guttural grunts. I played all the piano, and most of the piano that was played was with the lid up and messing around on the strings, like and things like Hideout and things. And Sanctuary. No, not Sanctuary, but whatever. The ones that are very abstract and kind of 60s, almost like academic music, which if you listen to those Ennio Morricone scores, he does delve into that sort of academic 60s style. And every tune was just a little world unto itself, and ideas were just flying all over the place. And I can tell you about the main theme, a little anecdote.
Please.
Marketing
me.
was coming up with a demo that had to go out, or it was like a trailer or something that had to go out to the world. And they needed music in like literally 24 hours. And so I kind of freaked out. I didn't have a main theme at all.
Right.
And I grabbed my guitar and went into the studio, and no
Plunking
microphone
around.
or anything.
Yeah.
Just walking around and playing and singing and whistling. I did all the whistling, by the way. That was super fun. And just sort of absolutely had to come up with this thing. Bam, it just came out. And that was the main theme. So I tracked it up, and they had their theme by the next day. But then all the other songs were, also to give tons of credit to Ennio Morricone. I mean, what an unbelievable guy, an incredible composer. Those scores are so innovative and original. And how did I go about trying to strike a balance between originality and homage, right?
Yeah. It's tough.
What I did was I listened and listened for like 2 weeks to all his scores over and over again. And then I put it away, put it aside, and didn't listen again. And just wrote every track on my own. And, we played on drums and banged on things and did feedback with guitar amps and just so many different techniques. And of course, a backbone of MIDI for the orchestral underpinnings. For those sorts of colors, although I hired a French horn player, a trumpet player, a flute player. So most of the time that you hear those instruments, they're live. But the orchestral moments, the orchestral sort of foundations that you hear from time to time, that's all just MIDI samples. So out of practicality.
Absolutely. I am, yeah, enamored with uh, how you are able to take, um, like, I would be stressed out if you go to the people who control the money and they say, "What are you talking about?" And then was it once you got past that hurdle, was it just like the floodgates opened? You're like, "All right, we got to go." Cuz it seems like you would spend a ton of time and energy worrying about if you're able to do this because yeah, like you said, you're in this shift from MIDI to digital audio. And are you on the phone calling me like how do we get this done? Like how do you get across that threshold in order to allow yourself to be creative?
That's a really good question, and I would say at the very outset, I was worried. It was a big unknown.
Hmm.
I don't mean to by any means paint myself as an innovator, like somebody who was one of the very first people to do something like that in the industry.
But you
But
were though. You
I
were.
think there is some truth to that
Yeah.
somehow, right? Because it's not my achievement. It's the
Th-
hardware.
th-
It's the fact that we had more memory, more storage, more processing power, more graphics power. Everything was now able to afford doing this. And so what really was fortunate was to get that support, to
Yeah.
bring in musicians, to write them checks, um, and spend money. Uh, and thank goodness, because if they said, no, 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 just listen, we don't have any money for that, and it's got to be basically a MIDI score, a MIDI that was dubbed to digital audio,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It didn't ship in the game as a MIDI file, but like the earlier years. But
Yeah.
uh, it would have been a crappy score. It would have been just crappy. It would have been a MIDI attempt at spaghetti Western music, which we all know is all about kitchen sink. I mean, it's like why did the banjo come in, right? All of a sudden, and then, all these different colors that are almost a joke in a way. It's like a little pun that a banjo comes in. Um, and so once we got the ball rolling and we had laid down a couple of tracks, then it became nothing but creativity and fun. And that's
Amazing.
why I say it was my probably my best project ever, because of how fun and how loaded with ideas. And it wasn't just my ideas, it was other people around. Hey, what if we did this? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
let's do that. um Very, very free form. I look back at those years and feel very fortunate that, how free we really were. We were just down in our studio area and basically
Amazing.
did whatever we wanted, because
Amazing.
we were representatives of the LucasArts aesthetic, and we understood what LucasArts wanted and needed. And if Bernard walked in the room in Maniac Mansion, we knew that it had to be goofy Bernard music. We just didn't
Yeah.
know. We didn't really have to ask anybody. So it was a tremendous experience working with Hans very closely, working with others, and at the end of the day, all the tracks kind of complemented each other. There are some that are more tuneful, some that are more abstract and weird. Uh, and Yeah, yeah,
Amazing.
it really was a very fun thing. And maybe one last thing to say too, about you know that score, that soundtrack is, Darren Stinnett, the director, also known as creative lead, etc. There's different terms. Uh, he really wanted that game to be a spaghetti Western experience. And they did a beautiful job with the art and
Yeah.
the storyline, incredible, and that those cinematics are still just so dramatic and juicy, even by today's standards. But how could they really make it without the music a spaghetti Western vibe, right? And how do you do that? I mean, you could maybe have people who are like Eli. Uh, he's the ugly in The Good and the
Hmm.
Bad and the Ugly. I'm trying to remember his name. Eli, I think last name starts with a W. Um, Maybe you could have a character like that, and they did have characters like that for sure. They had pretty spaghetti Western characters, but the user, the player, isn't going to necessarily feel like oh, this is spaghetti Western.
Right.
And then you drop the music in and boom, it becomes spaghetti Western instantly. And
Yeah.
that was a real privilege, I would say, for me and our team to be able to wield that kind of power. We didn't mean to, it wasn't a power trip or anything, but it was certainly like, oh my God, the second you drop that in, it became a spaghetti Western.
Amazing. So yeah, you have that shift to digital audio. You carry that into the late 90s, early 2000s. What lesson or lessons did you learn from Outlaws that you carried into those next couple projects? You know, be it more Star Wars, Grim Fandango, Indiana Jones. I guess the big one is obviously like, well, now that you've proven that you can do that studio recording and get the message across and elicit emotion in that way, is it Pandora's box? Like, yeah, do you want to walk me through, or just say, this is the lesson I learned? I don't know. You can take that any way you want.
No, you're right on it, man. That's exactly what it was. It was a trial by fire that once you're done with that record, it's funny referring to it as a record, but it was
It's a record.
Audio.
It's a record.
CD audio,
Yeah.
so it really was a record. Then you're right. You had a lot more confidence going forward. You knew it just viscerally what it was when you needed an instrumentalist, how to go about it. You even had a Rolodex by now, and you had people you could call. And I and my colleagues became more skilled and experienced in things like microphone selection, microphone placement, just basic production do's and don'ts. And that was, but it really began for me. It really began with that project because before that, working with MIDI, you might as well be working with pen and paper.
Yep.
And I was conservatory trained composer. I didn't go to like a trade school and take mixing or mastering or anything like that. So yes, you hit it on the head. It made everything from then on not an unknown, but a known.
Yeah.
Going forward.
Which, given today's audio technology, you've already mentioned microphones and the processing power. Given today's technology, would you have done anything different with Outlaws? Or if you were to re-record anything, would you do anything differently?
Well, I would have had bigger, richer bass, low end, and that's okay. I don't regret or anything, but I do think that the album could have benefited from a little bit more richness in the low frequencies. Other than that, I was really happy with the different melodies and themes, and I guess talking about Outlaws would be totally incomplete without mentioning the juxtaposition of contracting ideas
Yes.
for the sake of zaniness, for the sake of what the heck? How did we get here?
Now, are you talking about ideas creatively with your colleagues or ideas in the music?
In the music.
Yeah. Throwing that banjo in. Yeah.
In the Ballad of Dr. Death, it's this kind of weird pop. By the way, I found out later that it was played on Australian public radio quite a lot.
Really?
Yeah. Apparently, the Ballad of Dr. Death was a big deal in Australia for a while. But it's funny, I know. But it had zany things like the beat and the sort of the pulse of it all and the different instruments. But then you get through the first section, which sounds kind of like quirky rock and roll in a way. And you get to that first section, and all of a sudden it goes to like harps and harpsichord and a recorder playing this sort of little Elizabethan melody. Like, What's the point of that? Where did that come from? It makes absolutely no sense at all. And that's what was good about it, I think. And then the second time that little Elizabethan section comes around, I took the time, I got a hold of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, and I went to one of my favorite parts where there's this big crescendo, and I tracked it up on in my MIDI sequencer, and got as best an orchestral realization as I could in those days.
Yep.
And it all of a sudden, this little Elizabethan thing just kind of morphs into, we're listening to Beethoven's symphony.
Right.
Now
You're kind of
Beethoven's
dancing
symphony is
along,
in,
coming up. Yeah, that's
yeah, it kind of comes up, and then it's in C minor, and the Ballad of Dr. Death was in B minor. But the beauty was, I think so, and maybe I'm biased, but the beauty was I didn't care, and that was the point. Is that so often things that would be wrong, or how could you follow that idea with that idea, or what are you doing? We're like, hell yeah, I'm going to do it. And um so it has this big crescendo in C minor, and then snaps back into the main beat of
Mhm.
Dr. Death in B minor, which is like, you know, two minor chords separated by a semitone is generally not done in music. It's generally considered to be very abrupt and jagged of a juxtaposition. So that there are things that moments in the music where it's like, okay, what's it going to do now? And then it just starts doing this thing that
Mhm.
either a person wouldn't expect, or doesn't really make any sense at all, but somehow is entertaining and fun, and makes it kind of a tongue-in-cheek, a lot of tongue-in-cheek sort of little puns. And um, yeah, so it's difficult to describe without specific musical examples, but a lot of those gestures or ideas or sections were done in a kind of with a kind of a wink and a nudge, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
Do you think you get away with that because of the genre, because of the spaghetti
Yes,
western, right? Because
100%.
that, yeah, you're pushing against the rules of composition and slamming those two minor keys together. It's what a fun experiment. I'm just
Yes.
what a fun thing.
It-
Yeah.
yes.
Is there
Very
any
fun.
I want to be, like I said, respectful of your time, but I just wanted to pick your brain if there's again, we're going, decades of things to pull from here, but is there, and feel free to hone in on Outlaws or pull back a bit, but is there anything you're particularly proud of that comes to mind? I mean, you've won multiple awards, you've composed, you know, many award-winning albums and games. Is there anything, I guess, if we need to limit it, is there anything in Outlaws that you're particularly proud of?
I think that the overall tone, which is a very vague thing to say, but the overall sort of vibe of Outlaws, where, for example, the very final track uh, elevates one of the themes that's kind of associated with his daughter and his family, elevates it to this big, bells are ringing and trumpets are blasting out the melody, and there's a male choir, and it just gets huge and dramatic. And yet there's also little strumming guitars with whistling,
Mm-hmm.
and just the scope and the way that there's this musical journey. I suppose that sitting down and listening to the album, from beginning to end, would be a way to kind of see what I'm trying to say. Storytelling, twists and turns, recalling earlier themes, and trying to create a cohesive,
Yeah.
score.
So I did want to, I always ask people I'm chatting with, like, especially industry veterans, is from your perspective, and please excuse the generacy of this, or the generic question is like, what are you talking to young new composers about? What are you telling them? Because um, I it's hard to throw someone like you and say, I've done this, this, and this. And I actually just gave a chat at a school on Friday, and I was like, I've done all these things, but why? Why does it matter? Why is it important? Anyways, I wanted to throw that to you and say, give me the perspective from you on what we can teach or what new composers should be doing.
Another great question. Your questions have been great, and
Appreciate that.
your understanding of a lot of the insights that you have are very good. Um, I definitely have messages that I
Yeah.
communicate to my students, or in my lectures, or addresses. Uh, I would say the two main ones have to do with when we say networking.
Mhm.
What do we mean? And what is our style? What are we after as an up and coming composer? When we kind of consider what networking is and how to go about it, and how the industry, and I should say the field of game audio, because that's
Mhm.
really what the field is,
Mhm.
how it works, right? But the other thing is much more, has to do with self-confidence and self-esteem, and having faith. And then it's about people 100%. This business, and many other businesses too, but
Uh,
this business is all about people. So it really, really is the key to meet people, but not in an opportunistic way, in an exploitive way, but in a genuine, authentic,
Relational
human,
way. Yeah.
relational
Yeah.
way. So that's number one, hugely important. And by the way, living a life in music, writing music, being genuinely interested. If you want to write music for video games, being genuinely interested in video games, maybe playing some video games, getting to know the industry, and doing your thing. And here's where it transitions to self-confidence and self-esteem. If you are applying yourself every day, it will come. It will come. But the trick is, you don't know when. This is what the lifestyle is, and if one is patient and believes in oneself, uh, the networking component I talked about earlier, and the sort of lifestyle component, then it's a great fit. If not, it can be a very frustrating thing, that a person can feel like a loser, a person can
Mhm.
feel like I'm not getting any work, and so those are the two of the most important things, I think, that I try to communicate.
I was just saying sage advice. And at the end of the day, you have, as a creative, you have to be happy creating, and that's it. Because everything else, yes, it shifts, highs, lows, everything like that. At the end of the day, are you happy to create? Because that's what it comes down to. Otherwise, go into be a business major or something. There's much more lucrative slash, I wouldn't say fulfilling, like I mentioned before, but I think everything you've said today holds true and is amazing advice. And I just wanted to, finish the show by thanking you for your time and sharing those stories with us and taking us through some of your journey, because we only hit the tip of the iceberg. So I really wanted to thank you again, Clint.
Well, thank you, Locke, and really great questions again, and a great insight. I can see that we look at things very similarly, and not, maybe not surprisingly, because we both are creative, and we work with media, and
Yeah.
we have audiences and things like that, and it's a fun process, isn't it? I mean, and
It's special.
we
It's
we
really cool.
we we can close with this point. Isn't it great working with people? People
Oh
say to
my
me,
God.
"What's your
Yeah.
favorite aspect?" I'm sure for you too. It's just working with people,
Yeah. Yeah.
collaborating.
Yeah.
It's the best.
Thanks again,
Uh,
Clint, for your time and being generous. I know that was an amazing chat. So we'll say bye for now, and look forward to our paths crossing.
Thank you so much, Locke. Take
Take
care.
care. Bye bye.